Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Welcome. Today is the third and final series in our Black History Month series here between Ramsey County, sponsored by Ramsey County, City of St. Paul. We've had a great series of Friday lunch sessions. Debbie Montgomery, Marvin Anderson, Ben Mackay, Tony Carter, Patricia Brady have all been part of the folks that you've been hearing about, and really dynamic set of discussions. I know last year actually I emceed the session that Ben Mackay did, which was really powerful to kind of see those, to see the storytelling and the work that he's been doing for so many years to really kind of build that library of stories. And it's obviously, for those of you who know me, to have the theme of this year's series be celebrating Rondo. That's near and dear to my heart. It's the neighborhood that I grew up in. It's the neighborhood that my family's been in really since the 19 teens, even when they came up here from Topeka, Kansas in 1917. And it's a tremendous history, a tremendous legacy, and to have it celebrated here for this past several weeks has been very, very meaningful, I think. I want to say thanks, first of all, to our City County Black History Month Committee, organizing committee. Can you folks who've been involved in that just raise your hand? Thank you very much for all your work. And I just want to thank the county and the city have been doing this together jointly for a few years now, and it's great to have that partnership with the county and making this really a great successful event each and every year that we've put it on. Today's event really focuses on communications, art, literacy, some different ways of thinking about how we preserve community. We're going to hear from our keynote, Dan Bergen, who's an award-winning media producer. I'll introduce him in a few minutes. And then we're going to be hearing from Jan Mandel and the African American Male Initiative, going to be doing a performance for us. But I just want to talk about, arts and communications as a way of preserving history. It's just such an important piece of kind of how we not only preserve history, but I think also about how we continue to tell our stories, share our values. And certainly in St. Paul, the arts and culture have been a big part of what makes St. Paul so special, both in the schools, in the community, in a variety of different settings. So it's been great. It's going to be great to have those folks join us, and I think you'll really like the program today. We are going to start, though, with the Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Black National Anthem, led by our St. Paul Conservatory for the Performing Arts. I have sung the Black National Anthem many, many, many times. I have never done it with the accompaniment of a string quartet, and so I'm going to depend on you all to pick the right key. Please stand and join me. You have the words. We're just going to do the first verse. so much. We are going to move to proclamations. We have with us today Mayor Chris Coleman, Mayor of the City of St. Paul, Council President Kathy Lantry, who's the Council President of the St. Paul City Council, and Jim McDonough, Chair of the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners. So if I can have the three of them come up and read their proclamations.
I'm going to do I just want to say a few words before I read the proclamation, or actually I may defer to my colleagues because I think our proclamations are fairly similar. But I had an opportunity yesterday to do something that was really kind of an amazing thing. I was out with the president yesterday as he announced My Brother's Keeper initiative. And My Brother's Keeper initiative is an effort on the part of a lot of folks across the country, including foundations and government folks and the president and others, to really start understanding what it is that we're going to do to reach out to young African American men, to help them be safe, to help them do well, to help them make right choices and get on the right path. And it was a wonderful event filled with lots of, of course, any event in Washington, you get a lot of people that are kind of, the professional peacocks, I call them. They're they're a little famous, and they got to let everybody know that they're in the room. But the most important people in the room were not any of the politicians or any of the celebrities, although it was kind of cool. I did get to sit behind Magic Johnson at this event. But the most important people in the room were a group of young African American men and Latino men from Chicago. And they were part of a group of this initiative there that the president had visited a while back. And it was just basically working with these kids. They grow up in very difficult circumstances, very difficult environment, both in terms of public safety, and the schools aren't what the schools need to be. A lot of them are in poverty, a lot of them are in single-parent households, a lot of challenges, a lot of drugs in their neighborhood, all of those things. And these young men chose a different path than a lot of the other people that are making decisions in their neighborhood on a regular basis to make the wrong choices. And these kids haven't been perfect in their life. They've made some mistakes too. But they have chosen intentionally to move forward and to do well in school, to look at career paths and career options. But among the most important things for them was the story that the president himself could tell to them about the path that he chose, about the circumstances that he grew up under as a child of a single mom who didn't know his father, who didn't make the best choices always, and admitted to that in the White House. You don't usually have presidents like to admit in front of a large audience that they've made mistakes in their life, but he was very candid. And when these young boys heard the story that the president told, they questioned whether it was his story that he was telling. And they said, that sounds like our story. And he says, that's my point. That no matter what the circumstances are, if you have someone that believes in you, if you have someone that hopes, that inspires you, then you can choose those right paths. And I think that as we celebrate Black History Month, it's important not only that we kind of talk about, have these, I think all of these things that we do, remembering Rondo, the arts and culture, all of those things are incredibly important. But I think that we should kind of reflect back on what it is that we're going to do in this community to help inspire the next generation of our children, to let them know that they can succeed, to let them know that they live in a community that cares about them. It's not just about coming here and eating good food, though that's not bad, we like that. It's not just coming here and hearing some good music. It's really about dedicating ourselves on a daily basis to helping our children succeed, closing the achievement gap, closing the employment gap, closing the income gap, ultimately letting all of our children know that they're valued. But perhaps the most important and powerful kind of moment for me yesterday was an opportunity to meet Trayvon Martin's dad. And at first I didn't recognize him. He looks a lot like Isaac Hayes. I quickly remembered that Isaac Hayes had died, and so it couldn't have been Isaac Hayes. And then the president pointed him out. So I went up to him afterwards, and I said, Mr. Martin, I introduced myself to him, and I said, my heart just bleeds for you. My heart bleeds for you because this young man, whose life was cut too short, had so much potential. And it shouldn't be after our young children are killed, or put in prison, or drop out of school, that we come together as a community to support them. Let's do it from the beginning. Let's do it from the day that they're born. Let's do it from the time that they are first, entered into school, and let them know that this is a community that cares for them. Let them know that this is a community that expects the best from them, and let them know that this is a community that is going to do everything it can to help them be successful. That's what St. Paul's all about. And if we do that, we truly honor not just Black History Month, but we honor our entire community and the history of this community. So I do declare officially Black History Month in the city of St. Paul, but more importantly, let's dedicate every day that we are here to making our community a better place for all of our children. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I think it is always a reminder that we gather, and why do we gather just during this month? I mean, it's supposed to be sort of inspirational for the entire year, that we continue to remember the good work that so many have contributed to our neighborhoods and to the city of St. Paul. So I appreciate, because I think the mayor is right, our proclamations end up sounding sort of the same. But I took the time, my aide always does this and does a beautiful job, but I took the time to read it ahead of time, and it occurred to me as I was reading it that there are some really powerful statements in here. So I am going to take the time to read it and really reflect on the words, and also to say a big thank you to the group who's been organizing this. It is a big undertaking with a lot of work, and the only reward is that people take 2 seconds to say thanks. It was really great. When we know the planning for this takes a lot of time and effort, and so we really appreciate the work that so many people have done to put a great program together to help inspire us for the rest of the year. So, and the City Council passed this last week, recognizing African American History Month 2014. Whereas African American History Month, as we know it today, started its month-long observance in 1976 to celebrate the African American people and to highlight the role of African Americans have played in the development of medicine, politics, government, community leadership, science, business, religion, education, literature, theater, music, arts, sports, and many other areas of our civic and national culture. Whereas during this month, we recognize the courage and tenacity of many hardworking Americans whose legacies are woven into the history and fabric of our city and our nation, and honor the extraordinary achievements of African Americans and their essential role in shaping our community. Whereas during this year's observance of African American History Month, the City of St. Paul and Ramsey County will pay tribute to St. Paul's Rondo neighborhood with events featuring speakers who witnessed Rondo's history and are committed to preserving Rondo's present and future. Whereas by sharing the stories of these community leaders, we better understand the contributions of other extraordinary men and women who have given their collective efforts, energy, and spirit to create new horizons so all can discover them and take them further on. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the St. Paul City Council recognizes February 2014 as African American History Month with the theme Rondo, an Enduring Legacy, celebrating the past, embracing the future. And be it further resolved that the St. Paul City Council encourages all residents to join in recognizing the contributions and achievements of the extraordinary individuals whose work towards emancipation and civil rights will encourage future generations in St. Paul. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim McDonough. I'm a Ramsey County Commissioner, and I chair the Ramsey County Board, and it's my honor to be with you today for me to read some thoughts from Ramsey County about what this day means for Ramsey County. First off, I want to say sometimes it's really easy doing these things when I have to follow the mayor because he speaks so well and it comes from his heart, and I can say ditto. I mean, what he said was really powerful, and that's why I like being a part of the partnership between the city and the county, because we agree on so many things and what needs to be done in our community, and we can harness that energy and the strengths from the city and the county, and we can come together to really have an impact in this county. So, Mayor, thank you for your words there. They meant a lot to me. I'm going to read our proclamation because this is coming from the heart of Ramsey County. This is something that people spent some time on. They really felt like they needed to say something and put it in some concise words, and I'm going to share with you a couple of words before we turn it over to our back to Paul here. But the Ramsey County and City of St. Paul Employees African American History Month program commemorates the historic Rondo neighborhood of St. Paul with the theme Rondo as an enduring legacy, celebrating the past, embracing the future. Whereas in the 1960s, the construction of Interstate 94 destroyed most of the Rondo Avenue and much of the historic Rondo neighborhood, once a community of homes, businesses, schools, playgrounds, churches, social clubs, and organizations, from Marshall Avenue to University Avenue, from Rice Street to Lexington Parkway. And although structures fell to the wrecking balls, bulldozers, and concrete, the legacy of the historic Rondo neighborhood proudly remains intact in the stories, poems, music, reflections, and celebrations of its former residents and successive generations, who still carry the best of the neighborhood with them, pride in a sense of place and identity, and the internal strength and security that comes from a caring, extended family and a supportive community. Now, I'm going to read that again because I think that says a lot right there, and then I'm going to have some comments about that piece. Although structures fell to wrecking balls, bulldozers, and concrete, the legacy of the historic Rondo neighborhood proudly remains intact in the stories, poems, music, reflection, and celebrations of its former residents and successive generations, who still carry the best of neighborhoods with them, pride in a sense of place and identity, and the internal strength and security that comes from extended, caring family and a supportive community. Whereas that through the sharing of their memories, we also remember who are newly introduced to Cornmeal Valley and Oatmeal Hill, and the people who once lived, worked, and played, shopped, and worshiped there, and were educated there, now therefore be proclaimed. The Ramsey County Board of Commissioners in that month of February is African American History Month in Ramsey County. And be it further proclaimed, the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners urges all Ramsey County employees and residents to reflect on the legacy and lessons learned from the historic Rondo neighborhood and continue to strive for racial equity and inclusion. And I just want to share a couple quick thoughts because I know we've got a lot to go on the program here, but I spent a lot of time in my 14 years as a county commissioner trying to find ways that I can make a difference in my community, in my city, in my county, in my state, my nation, and trying to be effective in that. One of that was to invest in Union Depot and work along Central Corridor. And I can remember those first meetings in those communities and the emotion and the communication back to me about what happened to families, to their parents, to them as kids in Rondo, and to try to build that trust as we came forward in Central Corridor, that we've learned from our mistakes. We understand, we need to understand the past and we need to remember, but we can't live in the past. We have to live for the future. And we spend a lot of time as cities and counties trying to find tools, make investments for placemaking. We hear a lot about transit-oriented development, but in the end, no matter what we do, it's about the people that live in those communities. It's about the friendships and the bonds that they bring forward in their communities. And in the end, what I think has occurred here in Rondo, in our community, that even though a lot of negative, bad things happened when 94 came through and we lost that community forever, it strengthened this community because we've never really lost that in our hearts. And that gets passed on not only to the generations of families that grew up in there, but that gets passed on to me, that gets passed on to my children that live in this community, because we're all a part of that. So I'm glad to be able to be a part of this recognition today. I'm glad to be a part of celebrating all the work that the team has put together here. And Paul Williams, back to you.
So thank you to Council President Lantry, Mayor Coleman, and Chair McDonough. All three of those folks, you just don't know how hard they work every day that they are in this city to make this a great place, and we're better for their work. We're going to shift now to a performance actually led by Jan Mendel and from the St. Paul Public Schools and the African American Male Initiative. The African American Male Initiative is a project of the Arts Literacy Team at the Multicultural Resource Center within the St. Paul Public Schools. It's a joint effort of the St. Paul Public Schools, the East Metro Integration District. The Multicultural Resource Center supports dedicated student achievement, equity, and social justice by providing resources and programming to students, staff, families, and community members throughout their districts. The initiative has given these young men, in particular, an opportunity to work on a group project centering on reading, writing, performing, really with the intent to build a safe and positive academic community by and for African American males, to foster an interest in reading and writing through the study of legacy, and to assist students in writing the stories, to writing their own stories, and to presenting those stories throughout the community. All the work is original student work. Jan Mendel has worked with the St. Paul Public Schools for 35 years as the lead for the Central Touring Theater, and is now working district-wide overseeing team building capacity for the Arts Literacy Program. Team members include Tamiko Castillo, Shalonda Flowers, Alex Ward, Malcolm White, Ahanti Young, and Cody Nelson. So please welcome Jan Mendel.
And you can bring the young men in, so just come on in as I'm talking. Mayor Coleman, I want to say that this Brothers Keeper idea that Barack Obama came out a couple days ago, I guess when you were there, and this program is so much like that 8 years ago when Dr. Darlene Fry brought AVID to St. Paul schools. They looked at statistics, and they came to Central Touring Theater with these terrible statistics about the likelihood of young African-American males to go on to college. And so we showed them to our students, thinking they would create some kind of play about it that would help lift them and help educate teachers. When they saw the statistics, they were silenced, some were crying, and they looked to us and said, you know, we don't need to write a play, we need a support group. And so we listened to them. We listened to the voice of our young black males, and we started a group called Seeds of Change that went on for 4 years. It was once a week in the basement of Central High School. And then they said, we need more than one day. Again, listening to the voices of our young black youth. And so we created an all African-American male AVID class. Right now we have 3 of them at Central. We have 1 over at Benjamin Mays. And this is the first year at Washington. This is the first time this group has come together as an all African-American male AVID class. Arts literacy on top of it, what we did is we added text, so what they studied was their own literacy. So you'll see in the very beginning, they studied a variety of people that they turned into, because arts literacy is performance, they turned into a rhythm performance. In the middle was honoring their current legacy, so they picked somebody in their lives to honor, and at the end is really their legacy that they want to leave, a call to action for manhood. I'm just going to turn it over to this group. I'd like to start with a 3, 2, 1 action so you all feel involved. So I'm going to step away from the microphone. We're going to yell it out together. 3, 2, 1 action, and we'll begin. Ready, and 3, 2, 1, action.
Everybody has a legacy. Jackie Robinson had the color berry out the park. Parks! Rosa Parks sat in front of the bus for a stop for our rights.
The rights to the truth.
To join the truth, act for women just like you.
You're scot-free.
Dred Scott sued them for slavery. Alvin Ailey, the choreographer, danced. And the result of it all?
It's saving me. Legacy.
Robert Legacy, MLK. I had a dream.
Robert Legacy, Rosa Parks, I won't stand up. Robert Legacy, slavery, we are free. Robert Legacy, Frederick Douglass, abolitionist. Robert Legacy, Obama, first black president. Robert Legacy, Cornel West. Robert Legacy, Mandela. Robert Legacy, Emmett Till. Robert Legacy, Trayvon Martin.
I was thinking about racism in its prime. I mean, I couldn't imagine how it must have been like living in that time. You had to fight for a pinch of rights. But when you did that, the police would treat you like you're a bomber on an active bomb site. Then after that, you'd be in jail. You're in jail without a chance of bail. So just like a fire, the need for equal rights ignited. I know a lot of people didn't live to see this day, but I know they would have been delighted. It wasn't just MLK with the dream. It was a lot of people, and now I can be whatever I want to be. So I honor the legacy. Now we can hold our head high triumphantly. So I say thank you to anyone who supported that dream. So I say thank you to anyone who suffered trying to achieve that dream. So I say thank you and sorry to anyone who died trying to achieve that dream.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Robert Legacy, Nat Turner, freedom fighter. Robert Legacy, James Baldwin, he was a writer. Robert Legacy,
Muhammad Ali.
flow like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Robert Legacy, Kendrick Lamar, high power. Robert Legacy, August Wilson,
the homies stop rolling the 4 doors and clinching my claustrophobia. So I hop out the DeLorean and slide into a cornucopia way too big for a borderline agoraphobic euphoria utopia. Shush, don't talk, even though this walk is supposed to be awkward and lonesome. I just don't talk none. I got billions of souls on my set phone. They made sure by the gods that I deserve to be the marked one that I have every right to stalk the sun. They're locked to the chronological formaldehyde, methanol, ethanol, forever bottled in time. That makes me think twice where I got my cotton socks from, my cotton shirt, my cotton boxes. Let's count the coffins. Cotton's when people's freedom was cotton. So every time it's mixing, the souls of my dome get to knocking. Usually that wouldn't bother me even if my head starts throbbing. But it's a little shocking that my friends will beat on the table to the rhythm of jingling chains and the whipping from a landowner probably named Big Bob Swanson. I hear pish posh, this is nonsense. That makes me nauseous because that's a bit obnoxious. Look how far we will not fit. Not shit, say we'll not fit, and that's just not it. Stop trying to be the world's most favorite activist, the one that's willing to bash a fist in the back of a clan member's head, strap a saddle on a cheetah, paint the paper black, and run off in the path of blood red mist. Screaming, I wouldn't want to be ya, even though they already be us. Oh Lord, sweet Jesus, how do we have a 947 next sworn and the whole world continues to beat us? Legends left the legion of leverage, and all you carry is treason. This is not just a fat lady, it's not over till the whole world screams songs of freedom. This is my anti-crushing motherland's heart song. Don't knock on your brothers, know you're right from wrong. Don't get too comfortable when the light dawns. Don't ponder too long in the youth pond. Stand strong. Word is bond.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Rondo legacy, Morgan Freeman, Shawshank Redemption, Rondo legacy, Black Wall Street, money, Rondo legacy, Tupac Shakur, keep your head up, Rondo legacy, Jesse Jackson, Red Basket, Rondo legacy, Bill Russell, 11 Rings, Rondo legacy,
Jim Crow lost.
Can't the black man down, Rondo legacy, single mothers, Rondo legacy, loyal fathers.
Young boy, I observed you listening, Chief Keef. The beat from the music penetrates your self-conscious as you nod in harmony to the same lyrics that has harmfully destroyed the black youth's soul eternity. The word nigga floats above your head, not realizing the gravity of the words you just said. These are words that you assume as you turn up the volume, but the music is a death tune that has sent your brothers to emergency rooms. I know you're laughing and scoffing, but as you glared at that coffin, thousands dead trying to mimic an image which were designed to keep you black men in prisons. You're worth more than what your teachers have been teaching. You could have royal bloods from the Egyptians. Proving the ancient inscriptions, you're not just the color black. Your ancestors were African, though some deny this fact. In Africa, there was wealthy kingdoms with sophisticated mathematics, astronomers, and economics, and community of global trading. After the colonizer came and killing up and invading, ripping up ancient tribes of Ghana, Senegal, and Nigeria. Many Africans were then shipped to a country of inhumanity. 15 to 30% African Muslim men were forced to embrace Christianity. Why deny its reality? Half of us brothers lost our unity of inspiration. So don't blame society, blame yourself. It's time to recover from this global depression. Legacy. I honor my mother for bringing the poet out of me.
Today I'm honoring my grandmother, Stephanie. She told me her story. How she had my mother at a young age. She graduated high school and college. She struggled, but she still persevered. And because of her, when obstacles in life occur, I shall not fall.
Honoring my mom, Stacy Lee. Her goal was to have 7 beautiful young children. But if she passes, her legacy would be to have a loyal, loving, caring family that sticks together, and we would impact each other positively.
We're honoring our mom, Rena Walker.
I'm honoring the Story family.
I'm honoring the Solid family because without them, I wouldn't be the man I am today.
I'm honoring my auntie Marla because she was like a father to me, and I'm gonna be there for my kids. I honor my auntie Miss Mooch.
I honor my older sister, Anacita, because without her, I wouldn't want to go to college.
I honor my mom, Zena Oda.
I honor my mom, Jeray, and now I'll quote MLK. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you must keep on moving forward. And I used to be a very unsuccessful man. But every time I think about my mom, she inspires me to be the best. I'm honoring my family.
I'm honoring my Uncle Bash, even though he passed away, he took us and gave us a place to stay.
I'm honoring my grandmother for striving me to move forward.
I'm honoring my mother and my grandmother for embedding Christ in me.
I'm honoring my father, Curtis King, and I'm honoring my mother, Dakisha Whitson.
I'm honoring my mother, Cherish. I'm honoring my mom and dad, Mary Nixon, Donnie Richardson.
I'm honoring my grandmother, Leila Hyatt, for teaching me the importance of family, and that even on our darkest days, we must care for one another.
I'm honoring my family.
I'm honoring my mom for teaching me how to be considerate and assertive at the same time.
To my young brothers that are struggling, I understand you. See, I know that your father left you without a legacy. Now you're misinformed about your history, ready to die because even with binoculars, you can't see your destiny. Will somebody please tell me what happened to the dream that they were supposed to see?
5 things I want to say.
No, I want to say. I want to say it though. I want to say
What?
to a black man. 1.
Fighting a war that started with ancestry
is not easy.
but getting through is half the battle.
Half the battle.
We must maintain a lifestyle that most of society doesn't understand or sometimes
Looks down on.
2.
I hope.
We hope.
You don't see yourself as a monster.
Like the world does.
3.
Be successful.
Be successful.
Dream big.
Be successful.
Live life to the highest order.
Be successful.
The sky is the limit. If you fall,
Get back up.
4. Remember the lessons that have guided you throughout life and never forget.
Never forget.
What your ancestors gave up for you to get this far. Life is like a basketball game. It goes back and forth until we choose.
We choose.
To come out on top. 5. Don't let the stereotypes control you. Always remember.
You control the stereotypes.
If we present ourselves in a phenomenal way, we can surpass
Anything.
There will always be men struggling to change.
And there will always be those who are controlled by the past by Edgar James.
Black man, I got so much love for you.
Black man, I got so much love for you. Black man, I got so much love for you. Black man, I got so much love for you. Black man.
You're loved by nature. You're gonna have haters. Don't let no one tell you you're evil, like Darth Vader.
Black man, I know you've been through a lot, but that should be no reason for you not to come out on top.
Top of the world.
Smiling in that white man's face, letting him know he's not the only superior race.
Black man.
You a star, bro. Don't let these streets get the best of you. Where will you be in 5 years?
Black man.
There's always ups and downs in life, but you gotta live through it because it's life.
Black man.
This is what you need to know, is that you can make it somewhere in life.
Black man. I want so much more for you. The question is, do you too? Ooh, don't kill him.
Giving the gifts that my ancestors gave. I'm the dream of the hope of the slave.
I rise, I rise, I rise. Ooh, don't kill him. Ooh, don't kill him. Ooh, don't.
The black skin.
Black skin. The black skin.
The black skin.
The black skin.
Is not a badge of shame, but rather a glorious symbol of
Of
national
national
greatness.
greatness.
Marcus Garvey. Black, what does it mean to you?
B, bold, beautiful, brave.
L, loyalty, loving, and learning.
A, amazing in art and attractive.
C, color, culture, and charisma.
K, kingdom, kindness, and knowledge.
Black.
Few things I want to say to a black man. One. To my brothers and sisters that will listen.
Listen.
Not fit these unnecessary stereotypes.
Stereotypes.
That other people make about us. Be better than that.
Be better than that.
What happens to a dream deferred?
What happens to a dream deferred? What happens to a dream deferred?
Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun?
Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun?
Lexi Hughes,
Harlem,
1951.
2.
Two.
It is always wrong we argue. But when we meet up in a section filled with clouds and mist, we on one is equal.
3. The spirit of belief, soul of Jesus.
Soul of Jesus.
Things I want to say to a black man.
Black man.
You are loved by many. As opposed to being defined by others.
You are.
A remnant of forgotten culture.
So get used to me.
Get used to who?
Get used to me.
Let me hear you now.
Get
I
need to be dedicated to
our
generation. So pass on the knowledge we learned today so we can be successful for tomorrow.
So get used to me.
I
said get used to me.
Let me hear you now.
Get used to me.
I do my time now.
Get used to me.
I do my time now.
Get used to me.
I want my time now.
Get used to me.
Legacy.
Fabulous. What a gift. Thank you so much. I just was thinking about legacy and history and all the, especially the history in Rondo. You know, our police force, we had a black police chief from Rondo, police officers, generations of police officers from the black community, doctors, dentists, lawyers, judges, architects. Cap Weddington, one of the great architects who built many of St. Paul's most beautiful structures, Harriet Island. I was watching Channel 2 the other night, TPT, and saw a fabulous documentary. The lead stone cutter for the state capitol was an African-American bricklayer, artisan, who was in demand across the country and took the time over several years to reside here in St. Paul and to build that beautiful building. I read A Choice of Weapons recently, Gordon Parks' book, and fascinating, really storytelling of what life was like in the 30s, in the Depression, for a young black man who came up from the farms to look for opportunity in St. Paul, and obviously grew up to be one of the great photographers. The Pullman porters who worked the railroads and resided in this community, absolutely some of the finest purveyors of taste, of food, of great wine. These were black men who worked on these railroads and served truly kind of set the pace for culture, for grace, for dignity. So we have a rich legacy, and that legacy continues, I think, here in St. Paul in a lot of ways, and I think we just saw a wonderful example of that. The poor soul who has the duty of following that performance is Dan Bergen. I've known Dan for many years in a number of different places, but Dan is a senior producer and partnership manager for Twin Cities Public Television. He is an Emmy Award-winning producer, many accomplishments, among them his literary history documentary, Literature and Life, The Givens Collection, was named Best History Documentary at the prized Pieces International Black Film Festival. His documentary, With Impunity, Men and Gender Violence, was named Best Documentary of 2012 by Minneapolis St. Paul magazine. He was production fellow for the PBS documentary Slavery by Another Name, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. His films have screened at the American Film Institute, the Chicago International Children's Film Festival, the Hollywood Black Film Festival, and equally notably, in the 1990s, which is when I really started to follow him, he produced the groundbreaking Don't Believe the Hype, TPT's Emmy Award-winning youth media program. So please welcome Dan Bergen.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. This is, we all do Black History Month experiences in different settings, but I have to say doing it here in City Hall is powerful in a lot of ways. One, as the Deputy Mayor mentioned, Cassville Bullard, that stonecutter, worked on this building as well. So the stones that adorn this wonderful structure were also laid by this amazing African-American laborer. Just give me a moment while I work with the technology here. And I should probably get this out of the way. I was honored to be asked to be a part of this, but as the organizers will tell you, I demurred because, here we go, I'm a Southsider from Minneapolis. So and I could just hear, Robin Hickman and all of my friends from Rondo just kind of cringing when they heard that I would be a part of a Rondo invocation. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought it's absolutely appropriate, because as you're seeing and have heard over the last few weeks, as a lot of you know, the Rondo legacy is worldwide, literally. So I'm a son of Rondo as well in that regard, and you all are. We all in Minnesota have been impacted by the neighborhood that was, and the families and the leadership and the institutions that remain. So now I feel a lot better about that, and I think my St. Paul friends will agree. So yeah, just excuse me, there are my lovely little girls on my desktop. Let me just start this up. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about storytelling, and I have to say to our political leadership, those proclamations are like wonderful stories. It was really, I'm glad you all took the time to read those. And thank you, Mayor, so much for sharing that anecdote, that story of your experience with the president yesterday. It was very powerful. And the power of storytelling is really what I use as, in my modest way, to try and change and build community. And so what I want to talk a little bit about is some of the storytelling that I've done as it relates to African American history in Minnesota, Rondo, but again, kind of what that means to all of us. And the documentary, North Star, Minnesota's Black Pioneers, which you saw my little girls on my desktop. This is my other baby that premiered about 10 years ago, and it was a real amazing experience to be able to explore the state's diverse history and bring forward these pioneers, these amazing leaders who none of us, few of us I should say, who have grown up in Minnesota knew about. Some of you were lucky to be in communities where that oral history was there, but our intention with North Star was to create really compelling cinematic, maybe storytelling for PBS, and to make it something that might even reach some of the amazing young people who you saw earlier by just really invoking and bringing forward these folks through storytelling. You know, speaking of storytelling, I mean, this is a really amazing week, and you know, I was talking with Commissioner McDonough about, we worked together on a documentary about Lowertown and the Union Depot, and you know, just this week having the first African American president in that amazing space that's returned to us. And then, as the deputy mayor mentions, knowing that that space contains this powerful history of African American workers who really, by coming down from Rondo and working in the depot as railroad porters and redcaps, and then later in the post office that really used the space, you know, that really established a stable community that, and what often happened was, with these decent jobs that a Roy Wilkins, a Cecil Newman, Gordon Parks, and others could have, there would be a stability, and although the women in the community were working and hardworking as well, they would be able to do other things in terms of community building through organizations and other efforts and education. So yeah, it's an amazing week to think about the African American president coming to that space to kind of in the ghost, the presence of all of these men who worked there, and who are still with us with some of our families, but in other ways. So Gordon Parks was one of those workers. Before he became America's first major black photographer working for Life magazine and Vanity Fair, before he became Hollywood's first black filmmaker with The Learning Tree and then Shaft shortly thereafter, he was also a dining car worker. And so it was out on the rails that, among other things, he got his first camera. And so what a powerful story. That idea of connecting some of those dots of that narrative is something that I do as a storyteller, hopefully in a way that's compelling. But this is so great. I'm so glad you kind of introduced Gordon for us, because so many of us do, and as Robin Hickman and all the folks she's working with and kind of bringing Gordon back to us in so many ways, see a real powerful lesson. And the idea of a choice of weapons, which is what Gordon Parks, one of his autobiographies is called, has real meaning. And you saw that just a few minutes ago. Young, powerful black men who are choosing, education, creative expression, and kind of team to impact us is exactly what Gordon exemplified. And he told the story in many different ways, including a ride along with the Black Panthers he was doing, and they were kind of chiding him for being an Uncle Tom or whatever, and he said, "You've got that 45 on your lap, I've got my 35 millimeter camera on mine. I mean, we'll see which is the more powerful weapon." And he actually says those guys did die in a shootout, and here we are today with Parks' legacy. So I try and work in that tradition of Gordon Parks and just really the powerful stories the kind of holding up a mirror to America that his photography and his film exemplifies is something that I've tried to replicate. So Cap Weddington, who is an amazing character from St. Paul's past, who not only designed a number of municipal buildings that are still with us today, many schools that are still inhabited by our kids, but also his babies, as he called them, a lot of the best of the ice palaces from the high point of the winter carnivals in the late 30s and 40s. Those were Cap's designs, and it's an amazing story, and I was able to tell that a few years ago. Slavery by Another Name is important. You think it's bad me as a Minneapolitan coming and talking about Rondo. When I did a North Side history, that was even rougher. But in the end, folks appreciated my outside gaze on a wonderful community. Or a documentary I did that was kind of a promenade through park history, a really fun exploration of the evolution of Twin Cities parks, including a great moment with Stephen Winfield and Kwame McDonald at Oxford Field, talking about the singular story of maybe 3 Hall of Famers from the Major League, if Joe Mauer can get it together and make a run, that come out of this traditional kind of extended Rondo community. As I mentioned, North Star was all about bringing forward and putting a face on diverse history. And you know, we explored issues and themes, and we did spend some time on the Duluth lynching because that's important, but really wanted to personify the African American history of Minnesota. So what I wanted to do, you're going to have to allow me some technical change over here, is to show you just a quick excerpt from 1 or maybe 2 of those stories that I hope did that. And the theme of these stories was really about, hey girls, was about, you know, origins, because I'm fascinated by origins as a storyteller. And so one thing that I wanted to do is to talk about what really is the origin of Rondo. So you've heard a lot this month about the high point of Rondo, and certainly we're experiencing its kind of resonance today, but this is a story about one of those important moments that led to what would become the Rondo community. This is just an excerpt from the longer story.
As a reward for almost 51 years of meritorious service, John Hickman Sr., who has held the position as auditor, has been retired on full pay.
In 1924, St. Paul's Black Press announced the retirement of John Hickman. Hickman represented the emergence of Minnesota's African American community in what F. Scott Fitzgerald called the Jazz Age. But John Hickman's journey to Minnesota was anything but easy. In 1863, a young John Hickman was among a community of African Americans escaping slavery on the Mississippi. The Civil War and Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation offered freedom to those who could find it. Leading this pilgrimage was John's father, Robert Hickman, a rail-splitting slave preacher from Boone County, Missouri. Adrift on the murky river, the raft was approached by a steamboat. The boat took the family-filled raft in tow. The shores of St. Paul and freedom was in sight. But as they neared the levee, white laborers worried about competition for jobs used angry and intimidating protests to keep the boat from landing. Hickman and his followers finally disembarked further upriver near Fort Snelling. This fellowship formed into a congregation that found a name in their journey to Minnesota.
They called themselves Pilgrims because they made this journey, and so it became a natural extension that when they created this church, it would be Pilgrim Baptist Church. Once you understand the history and the journey, what they had to come through, it means everything. He was the first licensed preacher by the state of Minnesota, the first black man able to bear you, to marry you, to do all of those official duties, and it was recognized by the state. Too many times, I think, when we're looking back at people in history, we want to elevate them, give them heroic status. But I think Reverend Hickman, if you can imagine, to be able to stand in your own congregation in 1877 in St. Paul, Minnesota, in front of your own church, a licensed minister, how that had to have felt. Now when I look at the picture of him up that stained glass, he earned that. There's stripes on his back. I mean, he earned it. It's just amazing.
From a symbol of freedom for former slaves, as a center of early activism, to the heights of the civil rights movement, the story of Pilgrim Baptist Church symbolizes the story of St. Paul's black community.
Pilgrim was the gathering place, the community place.
And certainly in the times that Reverend Hickman landed on the shores of the Mississippi in Minnesota, it was not easy. And starting the church even in the downtown area of St. Paul was not easy. And Reverend Hickman, with his body of members, knowing that, I'm sure within his heart, knowing that he was playing a very important role in the development of blacks in St. Paul.
Reflecting upon the events of that period, it was wonderful how rapid the change from the condition of mere chattel to that of free man was accomplished. The seeming ambition of every man to become owner of his own home was encouraged.
John Hickman was proud of his father, Reverend Robert Hickman, and the other black settlers of St. Paul. A year before his death, John and other former slaves were interviewed by the WPA.
His health is failing, but he vividly recalls the events which prompted the pilgrimage. Upon reflection of his boyhood days, his face brightens, but he soon lapses into silence, retiring with the memories which are so sacred to him alone.
So we know of Pilgrim Baptist Church, still a vital entity and institution in our community today, but and it's just almost a mythical story, but a very real story of its origins. This is a powerful kind of, idea and anecdote and story to share. So with a community establishing in the late 18th century, and as kind of the geographic Rondo neighborhood is emerging, there was a real, and a little bit before that, there was an intention on the part of community to further build community and build out community. And so what did they need? They had business owners and barbers and laborers. The need was for professionals. And so, now we think of we're surrounded by amazing African-American lawyers. Javon, one of the organizers of this event, just great attorneys all around. But there was a time when there was obviously none, and the community said, we need lawyers, we need black lawyers. And so they went and they found a good one. And there's a little sample from that story of the state's first African-American attorney.
On the evening of July 11th, 1902, a grand banquet was held at the Armory on the campus of the University of Minnesota. It was the annual meeting of the National Afro-American Council, attended by historic figures such as W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells Barnett, and Booker T. Washington, the greatest gathering of African-American leaders ever to occur in Minnesota. The event would also be historic in that it would highlight a growing rift among black leaders on how to best uplift the race in the new century. In the middle of this clash was the man who brought the event in Minnesota, Frederick Lamar McGee.
McGee was a participant in this great American story, really, of the post-emancipation generation searching for what role black Americans were going to have in the country. And all that drama being played out nationally was being played out here.
Fred McGee was born a slave in Mississippi in 1861. By 1886, McGee had risen up from slavery, found education, married, and joined the most prestigious African-American law firm in the city of Chicago. 3 years later, he had been lured from the black Mecca of Chicago to the tiny black community in St. Paul.
The community had reached a critical mass where it might be important to have black professionals come in and provide services. F.L. McGee was one of those that was recruited. He had a law degree, was encouraged to come up here and practice.
And so in June of 1889, Frederick McGee became the first African-American lawyer to practice in Minnesota. The man who brought McGee to St. Paul, newspaper editor John Quincy Adams, introduced the attorney in the pages of his paper, The Appeal. The confident courtroom lawyer took on a series of sensational defenses and won. Much to the delight of the black community,
The winning of this case is a triumph for our able attorney. All parties to the case were of the Anglo-Saxon race, which makes the victory of lawyer McGee the more striking.
Fred was notorious. He would scrap with other lawyers. They used to say, not so much that Fred liked to fight as he was unwilling to back down from any attempts to disparage his character or his legal abilities. But Fred was a race man.
His connections with Du Bois led to a discussion in 1905 about an alternate civil rights organization, which later became known as the Niagara Movement. Later, the Niagara Movement melded into what would become the NAACP.
There wasn't enough room at St. Peter Claver for the memorial service. There had to be another one. It was a great outpouring of eloquence, the likes of which probably rarely seen. I think of Hubert Humphrey's memorial service as a similar sort of civic event. People recognized to a certain degree that a man the likes of which would not be seen again had been lost.
But as a memorial and testimony to his professional work, the St. Paul branch of the NAACP was organized in 1913.
Among the next generation of black attorneys that carried on McGee's mission was Minneapolis activist Brown Smith. In his eulogy to McGee, Smith seemed to capture the lasting promise of the late attorney.
He was a race man in all that the term implies. I know of nothing that would inspire a little Negro boy more than to hold up before his face a picture of Fred McGee.
McGee, literally, as you hear alluded to in that excerpt, had kind of national prominence and impact and really kind of put Minnesota on the scene in terms of civil rights. And just, an amazing story, and as the quote from our past says, an important example for us to see. So those are a couple excerpts of a couple of the stories from North Star, which again is broadcasting as we speak on our channels. You can find it on the web as well. And it just really kind of symbolizes this idea that Gordon Parks, talks about, and that it should be up there soon. This idea of a choice of weapons, and just in my work, seeing how important that is to give people that opportunity of creative expression. It's a real legacy that definitely comes out of Rondo, and it's in the legacy of a lot of the folks who do this work. But literally, and I wanted the young brothers to see this, I chose those weapons too. This is from the late 70s at my alternative school where I got to learn video. So I tell people, yeah, I've always been involved in media. I mean, I really have always been a media maker. So this has been great to share with you. I love the term civil servant. So I don't know if many of you call yourself that, but I think it's a lovely term, and it's been great to share some of my work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. That was fabulous, and good to know that I now realize that the things I've been watching and reading for the last couple of weeks have been works of yours, actually. Thanks to Dan. I want to say thanks to Jan Mandel and the African American Men's Project. I think, is that mostly St. Paul Central students or district-wide students? Washington. My fault. All right, so thank you all so much. I really appreciate all that you brought to this. I want to say thanks to Abundant Catering for an outstanding meal today. Thanks to all of our previous presenters, and in particular to our City County Employee Black History Month Committee for the organizing work that's taking place around this really. And thanks to all of you for taking the time out to just reflect and to work with us here over the last month or so. I think, as the mayor said, we need to not make this just a 1 month occasional stop. We need to really think about how we live this work day in, day out, and really make it real on a daily basis. So, thanks so much for coming. Have a great day.